Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NetBox community call for January 14th, 2025. Just launching the new year. Glad to see that we have such a great attendance today. So let's kind of jump right into it. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to kind of follow our kind of common pattern that we've been doing. So we'll talk a little bit of some of the upcoming events. They've been very popular in the past, and really exciting ones coming up as well. We'll talk a little bit about some NetBox news, and then we'll get into the heart of the subject. We've got two sets of guest speakers today, John, Eric, and Danko, and great topics that we'll see. And then at the end, we'll just call out, as we do on every one of these calls, to share your stories. If you've got a story, if you've been working on some really cool project associated with NetBox, we'd love to hear from you, whether it's in these community calls or other forums. They could be in terms of blog posts that we do together, or customer testimonials, anything like that. So we'll make the call out to that. So we can kind of jump right into the topics. So I don't know, Mark, maybe if you want to introduce this one.
Yeah, so as per always, we've got a ton of interesting events coming up. This is January 23rd with our colleague Rich Bibby, who many of you will be familiar with, event-driven network automation with NetBox and the Ansible automation platform. So EDA, as Red Hat call it, not to be confused with Nokia's own EDA, which is also cool, opens up a lot of capabilities for network automation when you're moving from batching all your changes to responding on a per event basis. And this is going to be hands-on. You're going to see demos of Ansible automation platform and its new event-driven automation capabilities alongside NetBox, so that you can respond through Ansible's event-driven automation to events happening live through webhooks in NetBox. So really interesting stuff. Scan the QR code or go to netboxlabs.com/events to sign up for that one. I think I saw the other day that there's already like 300 people registered for that. So it promises to be a high energy call. Next one is an in-person one. Unfortunately, I won't be at this one, which is a shame. I lived in Amsterdam for a while, so it's very near and dear to my heart. But a bunch of the team, including Rich that I just mentioned, will be going over to Cisco Live in Amsterdam. We're there for the whole week. We're going to have a booth. There are two talks that I'm aware of. I think Rich is doing both of them. One's like a little theater talk for 10 minutes, and then he's got a bigger thing for half an hour, and they're all about NetBox and network automation. But typically what happens at Cisco Live is we show up and we find out that there's actually 20 talks about NetBox. A lot of them are from people that we don't know or didn't tell us that they were going to do them, which we're very pleased about. So if you're going to Cisco Live in Amsterdam, be on the lookout for that. Last thing to point out here is, if you're familiar with network automation forums, AutoCon, or if you've been to some of those, you'll know that we've got into the habit of doing these kind of happy hour socials, which are really popular. And it looks like we're bringing one of these to Cisco Live Amsterdam. So scan the QR code or go to netboxlabs.com/events to find out all the details. And then hopefully you can come and meet up with some of the team in Amsterdam. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm pretty sure everyone on this call is aware of it, but I'm just going to call out that NetBox 4.2 was released Monday last week. Actually, just to be completely transparent, 4.2.1 actually was released later that week. There was a bug with the initial 4.2.0, but it's ready there, out there for people to start using and start playing with it. I've highlighted on previous community calls a number of new features, new modeling capabilities, some specifically for the service provider space, so they could apply to anybody. Things like a virtual circuit management modeling, things like Q&Q encapsulation, multiple MAC address per interfaces, things like that. You can go check out the release notes for all of that. I just wanted to call out one kind of the cool widget feature that's part of 4.2, and it's this quick add widget, and you'll see it kind of peppered through the UI. And it's essentially, in the example I'm providing here, is when you want to create a device, let's say the role doesn't exist, there's now a little plus button on the right there that opens up a dialog where you can actually create a new role, as opposed to having to move over to the interface and then come back to the device. You can actually do that right in device creation window. And this will appear in a number of different places. It's not used everywhere, and we'll be extending it over time to use it in more places. But just thought I'd call that out. And we'd love to hear from the community in terms of where do you want to see it next? Like where are the priority places where you most get kind of stuck in a dead end when you're trying to create something and something's missing and you need to kind of backtrack your way out of that. We'd love to hear from you on that. So just wanted to call that one out. Great features. Looking forward to feedback from the community. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was kind of maybe not quite as front and center, but did want to raise awareness of the new NetBox Helm chart 5.0. So this is a little dated. It came out in December. But the version 5 of the charts was out. There's a number of highlights. Most of it is kind of housekeeping, kind of refactoring, making it easier to support over time, but also kind of modernizing it or bringing it up to the latest and greatest in terms of versions and such. One of the big things, and as kind of minor as it might sound, but the idea is now to follow more strictly semantic versioning. So you'll know if you've been using the charts, when there are breaking changes, and so you'll kind of be able to use it in a much more predictable manner. I do want to make a shout out to some of the community contributors, Chris, Leo, and David, who and there are a number of others that have contributed to making this possible. So shout out to them and their efforts. Please feel free to reach out to them if you use it to voice your appreciation for their hard work. So anybody who's kind of wants to run NetBox in a Kubernetes environment, please feel free to look out for the version 5.0 of the charts. So on that, I'll pass it to Mark, and we can introduce our guest speakers. Get to the
cool. All right. Well, John probably requires no introduction. I got a notification from LinkedIn this morning that said your impressions have grown by 500%, and I thought, what has caused that? I'm like, oh, John shared one of my posts, and he's got a lot of followers. So some of you will know John from his previous work. He's now at Selected.ai and has been doing a ton of really interesting stuff with AI, and we're going to look at some of that today. John, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. This is really exciting. So I want to preface this with that I have a working example. Now, why I staged that is because this is very unpredictable technology. We are really at the Atari phase, the early DOS phase. We're really early here with this. However, I have seen it work. I have some videos and some resources I'm going to share. The whole idea is, can we provide a natural language interface into NetBox? How many circuits do I have? Could you add a circuit? Could you delete a circuit? How many providers do I have? Could you give me a table of them? In natural language, but without, say, retrieval augmented generation. So a while ago, like a year ago, I made a RAG approach that would grab the JSON from NetBox and put it into a vector store and let us chat with it. This is the evolution of that using artificial intelligence agents. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over some stuff here. The first thing I want to share is the approach. So this is known as a reasoning, act, and action agent model, right? And in this paper goes over what is a React agent model. We have a question from the user, the thought, an action, and then the final observation. Okay, now the tools I'm using include LangChain. I would recommend you start looking at LangChain. It is an open source Python or JavaScript framework for artificial intelligence development. And here is sort of some introductory stuff about LangChain. But within LangChain, I'm going to be using an agent executor. Okay, now what is an agent executor? Agents use language models as a reasoning engine to decide which actions to take and in what order. Unlike hard-coded chains where actions are predetermined, agents dynamically choose actions using the LLM. Now, I'll come back to Ollama in a second. This is the NetBox demo instance, and I recommend anybody on the call visit demo.netbox.dev. You can actually have access to open APIs, real working APIs, a good development sandbox for your NetBox work. We can see that there's 10 providers in this provider page. So what I actually did was I asked it, can I get a table of my providers in a human language? And I get back this table with real working links. If I were to sign in here, real working links back to my providers, just with a human prompt, without retrieval augmented generation or databases or vector stores or embeddings or any of that. So I'll show you the code real quick, but here is that agent executor chain. And you can see the AI has a thought. I need to verify if the API URL for providers is supported, then attempt to fetch the data again and count the number of providers. It actually reasons, the reason part of React. Further down, you can see that it's identified the correct API and is trying to make some calls. And eventually at the end, I do get this correct table of providers from this code acting independently. Now, in the code, we have, if I find @tool, discover APIs, check the supported API tool, get NetBox data tool, create NetBox data tool, delete NetBox data tool. So CRUD activities described as tools that then we give to this template that explains the tools it has access to, some guidelines, some guardrails, and the format of thought, and we can see the thought here, action, action input, observation, and then the final answer to the user. It has a scratch pad to do any internal workings or calculations or to take the JSON and figure out the answer. So now this is using ChatGPT. I'm using ChatGPT as my LLM. If I search for LLM equals, you're going to see here, this is using ChatGPT with the GPT-4o model. We are so bleeding edge in this tool calling that only very specific models actually support what I'm even trying to attempt, GPT-4 being one of them. So what did this cost me? It cost me 8 cents to generate that answer today in the cloud, as using the cloud, which has access to that JSON data. So it's not private, it's not secure, it's not confidential. I'm using a cloud service to generate that. However, let's try another one. Let's try a CRUD activity. So could you please create a provider of Bell Canada? And we need a slug, as that's a required field, with a slug of Bell. Okay, and I'm going to hit send, and I'm going to try to get my logs up right beside it. So check this out. This is just so remarkable. The user's asking, no, hang on, that's my last table's answer. So you can see it's hitting ChatGPT, OpenAI, chat completions. I'm experiencing difficulties. Let's try it again. And again, I do apologize if this doesn't work. I have seen it work. It's flaky at best, but we're so early in what we're trying to do here that I kind of forgive it. So it says it's been created. What does everyone think? If I click this link, do you think we actually have? Well, it looks like it. And if I go back to our NetBox providers and refresh, there is Bell Canada. There's Bell Canada. Just by me asking it. And the agent getting the correct URLs from a JSON file. And let me show you this. I want to be very transparent. This is all open source, by the way. I encourage you, I beg you to play with it. I have a JSON file with all of the correct APIs at a human descriptor. So I have a tool that says, go get the right API. and then a tool that says CRUD, right? Delete or create or whatever. The AI takes it over from there. How many lines of code is this, John? Like, how big is this file? It's less than 350 lines of code, including my Streamlit front end, streamlit.io for the front end, and probably 25 lines of template. So less than 300 lines of code. That's what I'm talking about. Now, can we delete this? Let's round out the CRUD activities. We've done read and create. Can you please delete the provider called Bell Canada? Send. Now, again, let's see. I mean, I don't know any more than you. We're going to see a bunch of calls to the API. It's going to invoke the right API and said, okay, it doesn't seem to exist. Let's try it again. Actually, let's just check. I've seen it actually say it didn't work, but it worked. It deleted the Bell Canada provider. So we've just rounded out the CRUD activities. Now, okay, so I don't have much time. Let me bring this container system down. Docker Compose down. And let me just delete that one container. And we'll switch over to the free private implementation and see if we can get some activity here. Where is it? It doesn't matter. I think I'm going to be okay. Ollama React here. Let me delete this container. And what we're going to do is, if you git pull this repo, there's going to be a main branch and an Ollama branch. We're going to switch to Ollama. And as you can see in my code, the LLM now equals Ollama. So what is Ollama? Now, the terminology is a little muddied because of the Llama business, but Ollama is the server. It's a little thing you can download locally on Mac, Windows, Linux, in a container. It has an API system and it lets you download models like Llama 3.1. Okay, so if I go to Llama 3.1, we can see that this is a 8 billion parameter model that is, how big is it? 4.9 gigabits in disk space. Local, private, secure, autonomous, anonymous, not using any cloud service. They have tool support, which they added in the summer of last year. It should have made more waves than it did, but we can actually do tool calling using Llama 3.1. If we adjust our prompt to pass it the tools, CRUD activities that I described, to the prompt. Okay, now, a couple of videos you might want to check out. React AI Net Agent for NetBox on my YouTube. And what would you ask your NetBox? I had a bunch of questions from the community on what you would actually ask your NetBox. Check those videos out. And on my GitHub repository, it's NetBox React Agent with the 2 different branches. Everything is out here ready for you to get going. So let's bring this container up. Build. And I should have cached the Llama 3 model. So what you're going to see is 2 containers come up in my Docker Compose. I have an Ollama and my NetBox React agent. And I have a little script here that's going to initialize and let you download Llama 3.1. So as you can see in this Ollama container, I've downloaded the 5 gigabit model, and I have an API listening locally through Ollama that now if I refresh this page, you're going to see that there's no GPT token anymore. It's my NetBox URL and a token from NetBox. And I'm trying to be cognizant of time. I'm going to try to wrap things up. So now let's just say, right, how many providers do I have? Let's do circuits. Let's do circuits. How many circuits do I have? And I think it's like 32 is the correct answer. But we're going to look at the logs. So look at all of this stuff you see here from my Ollama container. You can see I've loaded an 8 gigabit disk space for 4.58 gigabit parameter size. And now you're going to start to see API generate locally these API generate calls are going to start going against my Ollama server. And if I share my, my task manager, you're going to see my GPU start to pin. Everything is local here on my little RTX 2060. It's not a 4090 or even a 3000 version. It's an RTX 2060, but it can run Ollama 3 locally, or Llama 3 via Ollama locally. Now, do I have, let me try it again. And it is super flaky. It's not super high fidelity or works 100% of the time. We're going to try it again and see if I can actually get a correct answer. But right now would be a good time for questions. If anyone on the panel maybe has anything, or if anyone's asked any questions you wanted me to answer or address, I'd be more than happy to. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. I hope this was eye-opening.
This is awesome, John. If there are any questions from the participants, drop them into the chat or raise your hand and we'll take those now. Also, just to point out that we're actually doing really well for time, John. So if there's anything else you wanted to show in here, we can do that.
Okay.
Few encouraging comments for you. People are saying, pretty cool, very cool. Oh, we did get a question. Would there be a possibility to do complex prompts using GP? From
you could do so with the paid version, it's much more of higher quality. It can handle a lot very sophisticated prompts. Show me the path trace between this circuit and this circuit or whatever. So this hallucinated, there's 1,000 circuits in NetBox. There's not actually 1,000 circuits. But just to show you the logs, it's trying its best. It's looking at the right API call here and trying to make that call to get the answer back. And it could very well be my code or my implementation. I just tried to do this yesterday to try to do a free version of this. But if we shut this down, and let's switch back to my main version and bring that back up. Let me just delete this container, hang on. We can even try like you saw, it was able to make a table of visualizations. And just to show you what this looks like, at the front end, we're going to put our NetBox demo in. We're going to put our OpenAI API key in. And then we're going to put our token in. Save and continue. We can basically ask it anything here. So let's try to find a circuit. Could you visualize the AT&T circuit? We can see side A and side B here in the description. Let's see what it can do for that circuit. What can you tell me about the AT? Now, the special character doesn't help us here. Circuit. And we'll just see what it can come up with. But this gives us an opportunity to look at the logs again. We can see that it's okay. So like, look how fast that was. It's got the correct A and B side. It's got the right distance. It's got all of this information, the install date, right? So we can do some really radical things with this, just a natural language interface. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, we got some questions coming in, John.
Yeah, awesome.
So Jeremy Sanders asks, would it be possible to just use the OpenAPI spec as the data model definition instead of using, creating your own JSON?
So one thing I did try was actually making a tool to go load the Swagger document from the web, which is available. It seemed to be, I don't know, I didn't have great success trying that. I think as things get better, though, you're right, Jeremy, you're onto something. Can we have a tool that will read the Swagger or the OpenAPI YAML specification and use that information to then take the actions? Yes, I think that will come as the models mature. Right now, I found it just as easy to make my own JSON file with a human descriptor and the path to the URL. I actually started with Pokemon, everyone. There's a wonderful Pokemon API, and my very first agent was for Pokemon, and it will actually simulate a battle. It will get Pokemon 1, Pokemon 2's JSON, understand their strengths and weaknesses, and simulate a full Pokemon battle through AI agents.
Nice. Okay, Jose Campos says, nice one, but unable to get the Olama branch working right now. Is the best thing to do to put an issue on the repo, John, or how do you want people to?
Well, you can share your experience as an issue on the repo. Right now, I think it's going to take a little bit of prompt engineering to actually get the secret sauce to make Llama 3 work in the Olama branch. I urge the community, if you come up with the fix, if you play with this over the week or the weekend or whatever and say, I got the right template, it's actually working, I will accept pull requests. I want this to be the best version of it. So it's very, very early with the Olama branch. Just so everyone knows, 5.4 came out from Microsoft. It's a 14 billion parameter model, 9 gigs in disk. It doesn't even support tool calling. So even at the most bleeding releases from the major cloud providers, very few models even support this idea of tool calling.
Cool. We got a couple more questions. Jaco Duplessis says, would this be able to handle queries like show me all devices added after X date, or show me all devices that do not have a default IP? So just like a little bit more complex. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can try it. I think that's a wonderful, both of those prompts individually are wonderful. And I urge you to clone the repo and try it and let me know. Honestly, I think there's going to be some emergent behavior and some behavior that even I didn't anticipate. So if you go to automate your network on GitHub, it's called React AI NetBox agent, something like that on the GitHub. Just hit me up. I can get you the repo if you need access to it.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And great question, Jericho. Last question here, running NetBox. I want to use the API with Terraform. This is a question about Terraform. Brahim, if you go to the NetDev Slack, so go to netdev.chat and sign up, and then go into the NetBox channel and drop that question there, you will find lots of people who want to answer your question. Jamie Murphy asked for the repo. Thank you for everyone else for sharing that. Hey, Chris Russell. All right, I think that's all we got time for. Big virtual round of applause for John. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. A lot of fun. I think 2025 is going to be the year of agents, so try to get tuned in quickly.
Catch the wave. All right, thanks, John. We're going to go to our next speakers now. Some of you who've been paying attention will recognize our next speakers because we've heard from them before. There is some big news. The title kind of spoils it, but I'm going to hand over to, I think, Danko, you're kicking it off?
Yep.
Cool.
Good day, everybody. Amazing presentation by John. Great work. It's so exciting to witness it in live. And the way you shared all of the backgrounds, it's amazing. Okay, let me see my luck with the screen share, and then we can start in a second. Okay. Let me know if this is visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's start with the title. We are here today to announce something really cool, and this is our partnership with NetBox Labs on open sourcing NetBox Public Clouds plugin. It was developed by a few people in Nutanix, myself, Milan, and Eric. Eric is on the call. Milan couldn't attend today. So what we are doing, we have a public clouds plugin that allows you to model a lot of let's start with the core cloud resources from our main providers. We started our journey with AWS, then moved to GCP and Azure. As we did that, we noticed that some of the core components that they have kind of repeat, and it's something that we were successful in modeling, and this is what the cloud is, the plugin is about. Let me go into the next slide, and we'll touch more why we did this. So we had challenges within the company to keep track of the cloud assets. So it tended to be more of a shadow IT type of thing, because while we had good success with tracking on-prem things, also using NetBox, cloud was a bit different. Each cloud was on its own platform, and if you needed to search through all of the clouds, you needed to engage with all of the people, let's say, that are responsible for the specific cloud, and it was a bit tedious. And because in Nutanix we are really driving the hybrid multi-cloud culture to operate both on the on-prem and in the clouds the best possible and kind of in the same manner. This was a missing link for us when it comes to the infrastructure, tracking it, deploying it, and just being aware what's there. And at one point we said, okay, NetBox is great and it's extensible. You are probably already familiar with the custom fields, with tags, and this give you a lot of flexibility out of the box to extend the core models that are built in. But when it comes to clouds, we figured out, okay, we're going to sit down and try to make a model that works for the clouds that we are using, and also hoping that it actually works on more than just the clouds that I mentioned. Yeah, we did. We had a successful journey, and at some point, I think we already did a short presentation on community call in July for the NetBox, and we saw that there was interest in sharing this plugin, making it open source for the community to use, and working with Mark and NetBox Labs team. Today we are at the stage where we are going forward with this idea. We are going to make this publicly available for everybody to use. We'll start from NetBox 3.5 and make a commitment to support the plugin with all of the versions that are coming afterwards, including the new released 4.2. Okay, with the introduction completed, let me defer to my colleague Eric, who is going to drive us further down into the reasoning and a bit of our path that we took to get here.
Hello. So I want to go in a bit of the use cases. This is our motivation. So I have some example use cases here for, these are real actually at our company, but basically like a security use case is somebody actually reported, hey, one of your cloud VMs is, kind of doing a DM on us, basically, attacking us, can you shut it off? And then the challenge for the security team was, okay, the only thing we have is sort of a public IP for that VM. But once we were able to have all three of our clouds within NetBox, and we were able to look up that IP, figure out which VM that was associated with, and then via tagging of that VM, we were able to find the owner of it and track down that person and ask them to, address that problem. So that was there was basically no way to do that previously unless you contacted sort of, basically the administrators for each one of those clouds and had them kind of search through their own infrastructure. But basically we can do that search across all the clouds at once, in addition to, basically, our Nutanix has its own on-prem cloud via our product. And also we have sort of traditional on-prem networking, but we were able to search across all three of those domains to look for that offending IP. A financial use case is basically that, we spend millions of dollars worth, on cloud deployment, and we want to make sure it's used. So we get some I don't want to say this is a cloud monitoring system at all, but we have a very good idea of what resources are coming and going, and are they still there, or are they possibly unused? So that's a huge opportunity financially to figure out, where are the cloud assets, who is using them, what team is using them, that sort of thing. For compliance, we can do things like report across the entire cloud, looking for specific versions, saying, we know, this VM is still CentOS 7, we better get rid of that sort of thing. So that's, again, be able to do it across all our infrastructure at once. is huge. And then there's the traditional, networking use case. So, I mean, this is how we came to NetBox in the first place, right? We're a networking team within Nutanix, and we manage basically the IP space. So, the cloud was just this, again, I think Danko mentioned, it was kind of, we had, I don't know, 800 plus, cloud accounts started up by random employees, and then trying to wrangle the IP space that they chose for their implementation and bring that into a centralized IPAM of NetBox. We're now able to see that all at once. That's a pretty incredible capability. I'm not aware of any commercial product that can do that across all your clouds, your on-prem cloud, and also traditional networking. Danko, can you go to the next slide?
Of course.
Sure. And this is, I know this is a very busy picture, but I'm kind of showing our whole, I would call the NetBox ecosystem at Nutanix. But basically, if you look at the bottom left there, there's the actual NetBox instance, but in the middle, it was a bunch of Python scripts. Basically, they're implemented as, GitLab pipelines. And the one that's highlighted in green there that's the cloud crawler code that goes out to those cloud providers on the left there. So basically, the basic flow is, right, it first pulls all the existing assets out of NetBox down below there, then goes out to the cloud and sort of compares with what it knows, its current state with what's actually in the cloud, and deletes, or updates the data, and then writes it back down to NetBox again. And for the purposes of this announcement, the part that we're open sourcing is the NetBox Public Cloud's plugin code down there at the bottom. It's not the actual cloud crawler. So just to set expectations, this is just the data model. How you actually populate that is up to you at this point. I mean, maybe something we can do in the future is hopefully open source some of that cloud crawler also. But today's announcement is basically about the capability, the data model within NetBox itself. And would you continue from here? Go to your next slide, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So we wanted also to give you like a brief overview what to expect and how things will look like. So it's a plugin. So once installed, it would show up in the plugin section of the NetBox. And this is the structure that we chose. So we started our approach from top down. So kind of figuring out which cloud platforms we operate on, and on those platforms, like what are our accounts, and within accounts, which virtual private clouds we have, and so on. As you see here, this kind of chain up and down. We have a small diagram also to show the references, but this is the current state as we are currently using it. It's by no means complete, and even as we were preparing this, we understood how what is the potential and other things that this could track, and even maybe some non-ideal things that we currently have in favor of maybe a different model. For example, virtual machine interfaces is more like a ENI type of interfaces that are not VM specifics. Then it's something we'll be changing maybe in the future. But yeah, this is what you can expect. If somebody is interested in what's hidden behind all of these, so these are broken down here into what fields they contain and how they cross-reference both between the models in the plugin, as well as the NetBox core models, like the IP addresses or the prefixes, tenants, contacts, and so on. So this is the behind the scene inner workings of the model, how it's connected. I don't want to spend too much time here. It's more for if somebody's interested how it looks behind. And then I think let's go to the next one. Eric, you can take from here.
Sure. This is just showing, current state. This is our journey from the request from NetBox Lab to look into the open sourcing our code. So there was a lot, this is a multi-month process where I had to, it's a medium-sized company. It has a certain, bureaucracy that I had to go through and kind of check all the boxes before they would go ahead with this. But so the first challenge was just kind of find a leader that kind of believed and understood the implications of this, of what we were doing. And then there was a bunch of reviews, and we've basically been given the go ahead to do this. Now we really have to do it. So you'll see the green check marks to show where we are, what we've accomplished so far. And one of the next steps is once we make it available publicly, then we'll be, we have to kind of make sure it fits the latest version of NetBox, and have them go through their formal process. And the next step after that probably would be, just hoping to work with others. I mean, this is why we wanted to make it open source, is that, this is basically the work of 3 people working in a relatively closed environment for several years. And we want to get out there in the public, and then people immediately, throw new ideas and also add their experience to it. So we're hoping to have active contributors and supporters over time. And I know we blew through our presentation pretty quick, Mark. I don't know, time-wise, or do we have?
That was great. I mean, if
Okay.
there's more that you want to mention, we're good for time.
Yeah, I would just say overall, I mean, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a bias towards AWS, and that just reflects that's the first cloud we tackled. So a lot of the terminology comes from them, and we're fully aware that I guess that was one of the challenges, was kind of normalizing all those models and terminology from the 3 different cloud providers. Because and you'll see even the cloud resource groups, that's today that's an Azure specific concept, right? Even though AWS also has resource groups, but it means something completely different, right? So that was part of a challenge, is normalizing the data so it's sort of cloud agnostic. And then I would hope that maybe over time contributors could bring in other clouds. That's my
It's a great
input.
point.
Yeah.
And as we release it and release the documentation with it, we'll try to assist the users as much as possible. Like if they are on GCP, they're probably looking at projects to match into the accounts, or subscriptions on Azure side.
Mhm.
So they fit in the accounts here. So that was the big challenge: how to normalize everything that the 3 clouds or more clouds are doing differently, and try to put it under the same model and fit it in NetBox.
I mean, I was really
And
excited by that, the AI potential, right? Imagine you could write those queries and have them go across all your entire cloud infrastructure, right? I mean, I don't think anybody else has anything like that. It'd be pretty amazing.
Well, we're getting a couple of comments in, both of them from Chris Russell at NetBox Labs, who says, first, awesome to see certification is on this list. I know Chris spends a lot of his life installing plugins, so he likes it when they're certified. But he also says, I think you have your first helper here, happy to help on NetBox version support. So Chris has a ton of experience with getting NetBox plugins upgraded to the latest versions. So reach out to Chris if you need any help with that, Danko and Eric. And one more question just came in from Hallie Paiva. Eric, is there any material where I can study the integration of our Nutanix clusters API Prisma with a new NetBox instance? I don't know if that's in scope for the plugin, but it's a good question.
It's not quite. I mean, we have a separate, we call cloud. I'm sorry. If I go back, do you mind going back to the previous diagram, Danko?
this one?
Yeah, I mean, so for that's if you, sorry, I lack a pointer here, but basically you see a Nutanix Prism element, Prism Central, and then there's a Prism crawler, Nutanix Prism crawler code there in the center. That's I believe that's what you're referring to. So that's a separate script that's doing the same thing. So kind of analogous operation for the cloud. It's going out and crawling all the Prism Central instances within Nutanix, and then doing the same thing. So it has a list of clusters and Nutanix-based VMs alongside all our cloud VMs, and we can do the same querying and reporting based on there. Is that? And I mean, there's also a extensive website about those APIs at on the Nutanix corporate website. I'm sorry, I'm unprepared for that. It's like dev.nutanix.com or something like that. But there is a whole bunch of API documentation there, and that's what we used.
But it's a good question, and it's I
Mhm.
think on our side we should be monitoring this type of request, and if we see the community really has a need and a requirement for this, then putting effort into open sourcing this the way we open source the plugin should do it, because at the end of the day it is just a Python script that uh, gets an initial kind of repository of all your clusters or Prism elements, and then using the Nutanix APIs drills through them to find all of the underlying components, how the cluster is built, what are the nodes, what are the VMs, their memory, CPU, disks. But yeah, I think it's great to hear that there is interest in this, and maybe we can drive it further.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really just blows me away is the I think it's fairly unique that you could do this searching and reporting across sort of traditional on-prem hardware and software, Nutanix, Prism, private cloud, and then also all the public clouds. And then Nutanix has a product called NC2, right, which is Nutanix clusters on bare metal VMs within AWS and Azure today, and I think GCP sometime in the future. So those clusters live there also. And NetBox is the only tool that can kind of see both sides of that, right? So if you're, Nutanix administrator, you can come in and see the, what's running on those VMs. But from the cloud perspective, all you see is a bare metal VM, which is kind of a black box. You have no idea what's going on inside of it, right? So this kind of NetBox can provide you both coming in the front end and also on the back end. So that's fairly unique.
Very cool. Another question from Doug Johnson. Do you have a dictionary that shows this means that in the cloud documentation? By which I presume Doug means, is there a mapping somewhere where we could see when the NetBox Clouds plugin says X, in AWS it means this, in Azure it means that, and in GCP it means the other thing?
I think this is exactly what we mentioned a few minutes ago about when we post this publicly, the documentation that will go with it will try to aid all of the plugin users the best possible how to map between the clouds and the plugin names. And yeah, we'll definitely want to include that.
I mean, I would love to show a live demo of this stuff, but we couldn't figure out a way to have that not leak information, right? I mean, just even the most basic top level view is going to show, like our account numbers and IP space and all that. So it's like we need a completely fake way to do this. And, I don't know what they are, personal cloud accounts or something that has nothing to do with the company, but like we couldn't find any screenshots or anything to show you that didn't include proprietary information. And so it was a real challenge.
All right, so Doug, it sounds like when we figure out where the repo is going to go and get it certified, there's going to be improvements to the documentation that could probably help you out there. That's all we got time for now. Eric and Danko, thank you. I just want to say to everybody listening, Nutanix have been publishing all sorts of incredible work around the stuff they're doing with NetBox for, I want to say, a couple of years now. And this is like a real highlight in that journey. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more cool stuff in the future. And when it is finally made public, you can be sure that we're going to make a lot of noise about it. So be on the lookout for that. Let's get one final virtual round of applause for our presenters, John Capobianco, Eric Pierce, and Danko Trakovic. Very good. It's a bit underwhelming when everyone else is clapping is silent, but I'm assuming it's rapturous at homes around the world right now. We're getting some nice comments. Great work, John. Nice job, John.
Well, Danko and Eric, when the APIs, all you need to do is map them to a file, and we can slap a natural language front end on all that work you guys have been doing, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I see a lot of crossover opportunities there. So let's connect after the event.
Sure, that'd be great.
Cool.
We'll
All right.
see you on the NetDev.
Yeah, NetDev is the place to go for this. Actually, I'm just going to double check. I think there are more questions coming in. Oh, just lots of thank yous. Yeah, very happy crowd. Good. So I think, is this me or is this you?
Oh, we could take it. I could take it. So,
Sure.
I mean, Thanks again. To repeat ourselves, John, Eric, Danko, great stuff. But I'm sure there's a lot of other great stories out there in the community that everybody would like to hear. I'm sure John would like to hear to see how he could apply a lot of his work to what you're doing. So we'd love to hear your story. If you're up to it, we'd love to have you on one of these community calls. But there are many other ways that you can share all your success stories. And on the other hand, they don't have to be as kind of grandiose as these either. There's a whole lot of smaller kind of success stories that were helpful to a lot of other people. And so we're kind of looking for people who are willing to share their stories, and we'd love to help you kind of get that story out there. So feel free to reach out to us. And we'll find kind of the right mechanism to do that, again, whether it's on these calls as a blog or some other form for that. So looking forward to hearing from you. And on that note, I guess Mark's just checking to see if there's any other last minute questions, but just more thanks and just more love out there. On that note, if there aren't no other questions, I think we can go to the last slide and kind of just mention that registration isn't quite yet open, but it will be open shortly for our next community call on in mid-February, on February 11th. So we're looking forward to that. We'll keep you up to date with. I know that it's the public clouds plugin is a bit of a kind of dangling out there because it's not quite yet public, but we will, as Mark said, make quite a bit of noise when it does become public, and we'll also provide updates on the future community calls as to where it's available if you didn't hear from it elsewhere. So on that note, I don't know, Mark, if you had some parting thoughts.
Something pithy to say. I don't know, other than thank you, everybody. This was great. Huge attendance today. I'm going to blame John and his massive reach and his resharing. But yeah, looking forward to seeing you all in February.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.